Whatever you found downstairs, don't open it. The woman on the phone said those words before I had told anyone there was something to open. I stood in the basement of the Blackwood Hotel with concrete dust floating through the beams of two portable work lights. 30 seconds earlier, one of my demolition guys had driven a pry bar into what we thought was ordinary cinder block infill. Crack. A section collapsed inward. Dust rolled across the floor, carrying that dry mineral smell old buildings get when you disturb something that hasn't seen air in decades. Behind the wall was steel, not a pipe, not structural bracing. A door, nearly 7 feet tall, dark beneath layers of gray dust, with a frame sunk into the original foundation. "Nathan," Frank Dawson said behind me, "you seeing what I'm seeing?" I didn't answer. I stepped through the broken opening and wiped my glove across the steel. For words appeared beneath the dust. Blackwood Hotel, private archive. My phone vibrated. Unknown caller. I almost ignored it. "Nathan Cole." A woman answered immediately. "Mr. Cole, whatever you found downstairs, do not open it." Every sound in that basement seemed to disappear. I looked at my crew. Nobody was holding a phone. Nobody had left the room. Who is this? Vanessa Hart, president of the Blackwood Ridge Homeowners Association. I stared at the vault door. "How do you know what I found?" Silence. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But long enough. "There are historical assets associated with the former Blackwood estate," she said. "Anything discovered in that archive may include community property." "You called it an archive." Another pause. "Do not attempt entry until HOA representatives are present." I lowered the phone and looked again at the lettering under my glove. She hadn't asked what we found. She already knew. 17 days earlier, I hadn't known there was anything beneath the Blackwood Hotel worth fighting over. Most people thought buying the place was proof I'd finally lost my mind. The hotel had been condemned for almost 6 years. 3 floors of water damage. Failed plumbing. Mold behind half the second-floor walls. Part of the west roof had collapsed into what used to be the ballroom. When I first walked through the lobby, broken chandelier glass crunched beneath my boots. The air smelled like wet plaster, rotten wood, and old carpet. I loved it immediately. I'd spent 24 years renovating commercial buildings people had already given up on. Blackwood wasn't beautiful anymore, but underneath the damage I could still see what it had been. Walnut reception desk. Stone fireplace. Brass elevator doors. Arched windows facing the ridge. I bought the property knowing restoration would take years. What I didn't expect was Vanessa Hart. She appeared on my 3rd afternoon there. Black SUV. Tailored pink suit. White blouse. Black high heels clicking carefully across cracked lobby tile. Click, click, click. She looked absurdly polished against a room full of scaffolding and demolition plastic. "Nathan Cole." "That's me." "Vanessa Hart. Blackwood Ridge HOA." She offered her hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Technically, I don't think the hotel is in your neighborhood." Her smile tightened almost invisibly. "Adjacent to it." She looked past me toward the old manager's office. Did the previous owner leave anything behind? I glanced around at 40 years of abandoned furniture. About 80 dumpsters worth. She didn't laugh. Her eyes moved across the lobby, toward the hallway leading to the basement stairs. Documents? Keys. Old property records. Why? Historical interest. That afternoon, while clearing the manager's office, I found an old brass key in the back of a warped desk drawer. Heavy. Tarnished. Attached to a blackened metal tag stamped with 2 characters, B17. Underneath, barely readable, archive. I slipped it into my jacket pocket because it looked interesting. A souvenir from a dead hotel. Now, 17 days later, I stood before a steel door carrying the same word. Archive. Frank stepped beside me. "You opening it?" I reached into my pocket and felt the cold outline of that brass key. On the phone, Vanessa was still waiting. "Mr. Cole." I looked at the sealed door, then at the broken wall that had hidden it for decades. "No," I said. "Not yet." I ended the call. Frank raised an eyebrow. "Who was that?" Outside, tires suddenly crunched across the hotel's gravel drive. Through the narrow basement window, I saw a black SUV stop beside my truck. I already knew who was inside. "The woman," I said, "who somehow knew about this room before I did." Vanessa reached the basement before the dust had settled. I heard her heels first. Click, click, click. Slow, careful steps descending a concrete staircase built when women like Vanessa Hart probably weren't expected to visit hotel boiler rooms in tailored pink suits. Frank looked toward the stairwell. That your mystery caller? Unless the condemned building fashion industry just arrived. Vanessa appeared beneath the work light, one hand gripping the railing, the other holding a leather folder against her white blouse. Fine gray dust already coated the toes of her black heels. She barely noticed. Her eyes went directly past me to the opening in the cinder block wall, then to the steel door. She didn't look surprised. That bothered me more than the phone call. Have you opened it? She asked. Not what did you find? Not is that a vault? Have you opened it? I folded my arms. Good afternoon to you too. Mr. Cole, this is serious. Apparently. You got here in 12 minutes. Her mouth tightened. The Blackwood estate contains historical assets connected to the community. You said that on the phone. She stepped closer to the broken wall. Frank moved between her and the opening. Hard hats beyond this point. Vanessa looked at him. I'm HOA president. Frank shrugged. Concrete doesn't care. I almost smiled. Vanessa didn't. She opened her folder and removed a printed sheet. Blackwood Ridge has documented rights involving former hotel estate facilities, records, and community assets. Until ownership is established, nothing inside that archive should be removed. Ownership of what? Its contents. You haven't seen its contents. Silence. I watched her carefully. Unless you have. Don't be ridiculous. Then how did you know there was an archive downstairs? She shifted her attention to the steel lettering. Blackwood Hotel, private archive. Historical references exist. Where? Association records. Show me. Our council is reviewing them. That answer smelled like fresh paint over rotten wood. I'd heard versions of it for 24 years in construction. Whenever somebody suddenly needed counsel before answering a simple factual question, I stopped listening to the confidence and started looking for the missing document. Vanessa extended her hand. The keys, please. My fingers instinctively touched the outside of my jacket pocket. The brass B-17 key was still there. Cold. Heavy. What keys? Her eyes dropped toward my hand for half a second. There. Tiny mistake. Any keys recovered with the property. You mean the hotel I bought? Keys associated with shared facilities may belong to the association. This isn't a shared facility. That remains to be determined. Frank cleared his throat. For what it's worth, nobody is opening that door today. I haven't inspected the room behind it, and we don't know the condition of the frame or surrounding foundation. Vanessa looked relieved. Not dramatically, just a fraction of tension leaving her shoulders. I noticed. Good, she said. Then we agree. No, I said. Frank said it isn't being opened today. He didn't say you own it. Her expression cooled. You should expect formal correspondence. I'll check the mailbox. She turned toward the stairs, then stopped. Mr. Cole, opening that vault before the ownership question is resolved would be extremely unwise. And demanding keys to something you won't explain is what? She looked back at me. A warning. Then she climbed the stairs. Click, click, click. Frank waited until the sound disappeared. Friendly neighborhood? Very community-minded. I pulled the brass key from my pocket. Tarnished metal caught the work light. B-17. Archive. Frank stared at it. You told her you didn't have a key. No. I asked what keys. Contractor logic. Kept me employed. That evening, I drove to Laura Mitchell's office with the key, my deed, title package, and every closing document I had. Laura handled commercial property disputes and had an irritating habit of refusing to tell me what I wanted to hear. I explained the vault, the call, Vanessa's demand. Laura didn't react until I mentioned former hotel estate facilities. Then she turned toward her computer. 20 minutes later, she found the document Vanessa had been hinting at. Recorded in 1998. Blackwood Community Facilities Agreement. Laura scrolled silently. My confidence started disappearing line by line. Community Lodge. Lake Path. Maintenance records. Certain former estate facilities. Rights granted to the developer that eventually became Blackwood Ridge. Nathan, Laura said. Vanessa isn't inventing everything. I leaned back. That's comforting. It shouldn't be. She printed the agreement. The HOA may actually have rights tied to portions of the old estate. I looked at the B-17 key lying between us, including the vault. Laura turned another page. I don't know yet. For the first time since I bought Blackwood Hotel, I wondered whether Vanessa hadn't rushed into my basement because she was afraid I would steal something from the HOA. Maybe she rushed there because she already knew exactly what was behind that steel door. The first thing Laura did was take the B17 key away from me. She placed it beside her keyboard like evidence. Until I know exactly what you bought, you don't put this into anything. Technically, I already bought whatever it opens. That sentence is why contractors need attorneys. Morning light filtered through the blinds of her office while she worked through the 1998 Blackwood Community Facilities Agreement page by page. The document was real. So were the rights Vanessa had hinted at. The developer that created Blackwood Ridge had received interests in the lake path, community lodge, maintenance areas, and certain facilities once connected to the old hotel estate. There, Laura said, tapping the page. That's what Vanessa is relying on. So she wins. Stop asking questions before I finish reading. I drank bad office coffee and watched her turn pages. Exhibit A. Exhibit B. Legal descriptions dense enough to make my eyes hurt. Then Laura stopped. Interesting. I leaned forward. Good interesting? Potentially. She opened Exhibit C and ran her finger down a list of parcels. The hotel parcel isn't included in the conveyance. Meaning this agreement transferred specific rights and facilities, not the entire former Blackwood estate. She rotated the page toward me. One parcel was outlined separately and marked in typed capital letters, excluded from conveyance. The legal description matched my deed. Blackwood Hotel, its parking lot, the service yard, the ground beneath the basement where the steel door sat waiting. I felt relief rising. Laura killed it immediately. This does not automatically tell us who owns every object inside that vault. You really know how to celebrate. I'm paid to prevent expensive celebrations. She kept reading. Near the back was a faded inventory schedule referencing records retained by the hotel title holder. Most entries were ordinary: maintenance files, architectural plans, historical registers. Then one line stopped both of us. B17, owner archive. Retained with hotel premises. Neither of us spoke. I looked at the brass key beside her keyboard. Laura followed my eyes. Where exactly did you find that? Manager's office. Back of a desk drawer. On the hotel parcel? Unless Vanessa moved the property line through the lobby. Laura picked up the key by its tag. B17. Same code. Maybe. Laura. Nathan. Old buildings reuse room numbers, cabinet numbers, mechanical labels. We verify before we assume. She photographed the key. Click. Next step? I asked. Original title documents. Historical plats. Any archived hotel plans we can locate. By noon, I was back at Blackwood with Frank. He had spent the morning measuring the basement. He stood at the bottom of the stairs with a laser measure pointed toward the exterior foundation wall. Beep. Exterior depth is 68 feet, 4 inches. He turned and measured the interior. Beep. Usable interior depth to that infill wall was just under 60 feet. I looked toward the broken opening. 9 feet missing. Closer to 8.5 after wall thickness. Enough for a room. Enough for several things. Frank unfolded a brittle reproduction of an original basement plan we had found rolled inside a maintenance cabinet upstairs. Boiler room. Laundry. Storage. Service stairs. At the far end, behind what later became the cinder block wall, somebody had drawn a rectangle in pencil and crossed it out with a heavy handwritten X. Beside it were 3 characters. B17. The back of my neck tightened. That wasn't on the renovation plans. Because whoever prepared the later drawings probably surveyed visible spaces, Frank said. If the wall was already sealed, they may never have known. I stepped through the broken opening again. The vault door looked darker in daylight, filtering through the basement windows. Private archive. B17. Missing depth. A brass key. Separate clues were beginning to point toward the same place. My phone buzzed. Email. Blackwood Ridge HOA. Formal notice. Vanessa's name appeared beneath the subject line. I opened it. The association demanded that I refrain from accessing, removing, altering, or distributing anything from the archive until ownership could be reviewed. At the bottom was a sentence that made me read the notice twice. The association has long understood that original Blackwood community records may remain within the former hotel premises. Long understood. I called Laura. She put it in writing. What? That they knew records might still be here. Silence. Then keyboard sounds. Forward it. Already did. Frank looked through the basement window. Nathan. I lowered the phone. A white security SUV had parked across the road from the hotel entrance. Blackwood Ridge logo on the door. Nobody got out. The driver just sat there facing the building. Laura came back on the line. Do not confront them. Photograph the vehicle from your property and keep working. I raised my phone. Click. The security SUV remained motionless. Behind me, hidden beneath decades of dust, the vault remained closed. But the mystery had changed. I wasn't wondering anymore whether Vanessa knew it existed. I was wondering how long she had been looking for it, and what she believed was inside. The security SUV stayed across from Blackwood Hotel for 4 hours. It never entered my property. It never blocked the driveway. The driver never approached me. He just sat there beneath a maple tree with the Blackwood Ridge logo facing the building, like somebody wanted me to know I was being watched without doing anything I could complain about. Laura's instructions were simple. Document. Don't perform. So every hour, I stepped outside from the same spot near the hotel entrance and took another photograph. Click. Same SUV. Same road. Different timestamp. By late afternoon, it drove away. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Vanessa had upgraded from warnings to legal stationery. Blackwood Ridge Homeowners Association. Demand to preserve community property. The letter ordered me not to open the B-17 archive, remove documents, alter records, or transfer anything allegedly connected to the 1998 Community Facilities Agreement. One sentence stood out. The association asserts a continuing interest in historical records relating to Blackwood community facilities. Continuing interest, I read aloud in Laura's office. That sounds expensive. It sounds intentionally broad, she said. She had 3 stacks of documents across her conference table. My deed. The 1998 agreement. Historical parcel records. Vanessa has a real document, Nathan. That makes this more complicated than an HOA inventing authority from nothing. You keep finding encouraging ways to phrase things. Laura ignored me. The developer received actual rights in certain former estate facilities. If records inside B-17 belong to one of those transferred facilities, the HOA may have a legitimate claim to copies, possession, or access depending on the documents. So I still don't open it. Correct. And Vanessa gets the key? Absolutely not. That was the first answer all morning I enjoyed. Laura slid Exhibit C toward me. Because the hotel parcel itself was expressly excluded. And this inventory reference says the owner archive was retained with the hotel premises. Until we establish otherwise, nobody gets to convert uncertainty into possession. I looked at the brass B-17 key sealed inside a clear evidence envelope beside her notebook. Including me. Including you. My phone rang. Unknown local number. Nathan Cole. The man sounded nervous. Speaking. My name is Peter Walsh. I'm treasurer for Blackwood Ridge. Laura immediately picked up a pen. What can I do for you, Peter? A pause. Not over the phone. We met 40 minutes later at a diner 6 miles from Blackwood Ridge. Peter was in his late 50s, gray-haired, wearing a windbreaker and the expression of a man who had rehearsed leaving 3 times before walking through the door. Laura sat beside me. Peter noticed her. Attorney? Yes. He almost stood back up. Peter, I said, you called me. He stayed. Coffee arrived. Nobody touched it. Vanessa has been looking for old Blackwood records for years, he finally said. Laura's pen stopped. How many years? At least 4 that I know of. Why? Peter rubbed both hands around his coffee mug. There was a title review when we were discussing resurfacing the private access drive near the lake. I remembered the current HOA map Laura had shown me. Blackwood Ridge Private Access Drive. What happened? Our attorney asked for the original conveyance archive. Did the HOA have it? No, then what? Peter looked toward the diner window. Vanessa started asking whether any records survived at the hotel. My stomach tightened. Before I bought it. Long before. Laura leaned forward. What exactly did counsel ask? Peter reached into his jacket and removed a folded photocopy. I kept this because the whole thing bothered me. Laura opened it. An email. Several years old. The final paragraph contained one question. Has the original Blackwood conveyance archive ever been located? Laura read it twice. Who received this? Vanessa. Me. 2 other board members. And the response. Vanessa said the archive was presumed destroyed. I thought about the steel door behind 8 feet of missing basement depth. But she kept looking. Peter nodded. Quietly. Did she know about B-17? I never heard that designation until yesterday. Then how did she know I found the vault? His face changed. I don't know. Laura folded the email carefully. Peter, why tell us this now? He looked at me. Because yesterday Vanessa told the board that whatever is inside that room belongs to the HOA. Before anybody opened it. Yes. Did she explain how she knew? No. Outside the diner, rain had started tapping against the windows. Peter finally lifted his coffee, but his hand wasn't steady. There's something else, he said. That access drive wasn't the only reason council wanted the original archive. Laura looked up. What else? Peter swallowed. The title company couldn't verify that Blackwood Ridge ever received the parcel underneath it. The room seemed to narrow around that sentence. I pictured Vanessa standing in my basement, dust on her black heels, demanding keys to a vault she claimed belonged to the community. Maybe she hadn't been trying to recover HOA property. Maybe she had been trying to reach the documents before I discovered which property the HOA had never owned. Peter's sentence followed me all the way back to Blackwood Hotel. The title company couldn't verify that Blackwood Ridge ever received the land beneath its own private access drive. I had spent 24 years renovating buildings, and I knew what happened when one bad assumption got buried beneath years of new work. Somebody drew from the wrong measurement. Somebody else trusted the drawing. Concrete got poured. Walls went up. 20 years later, everyone treated the mistake like a fact because fixing it had become inconvenient. Property records weren't that different. The next morning, Laura arrived carrying 2 document boxes and the expression she wore when something had stopped being interesting and started becoming important. We found the old developer conveyance index. She spread photocopies across the walnut reception desk in the ruined lobby. Rain tapped against the arched windows. Somewhere upstairs, a compressor kicked on with a low mechanical hum. The 1998 agreement references several transferred parcels, she said. The lodge parcel transferred. The lake path easement transferred. The maintenance tract transferred. And the access drive? Laura placed one finger on a blank line in the index. I can find references to intended transfer. I cannot find the recorded deed completing it. So the HOA doesn't own it. I didn't say that. You attorneys should put that on coffee mugs. There could be a later deed. A corrective instrument. A recording under a different grantor name. We verify. She slid another document toward me. But now Peter's concern makes sense. My phone buzzed. Another email from Vanessa. Notice of potential unauthorized access to association property. She's getting creative, I said. Laura read it. She's getting nervous. The email demanded written confirmation that B-17 remained sealed. It also requested that any key, code, combination, inventory, or access device associated with the archive be surrendered to Blackwood Ridge pending review. I glanced toward the basement stairs. Still no key. Still no key. Still no vault. Not until Frank clears the room and we finish the title review. Waiting was becoming unbearable. Every time I crossed the lobby, I felt the brass B-17 key in the evidence envelope inside my locked office cabinet. Every trip downstairs ended with that steel door staring back at me. Private archive. Whatever was behind it had survived abandonment, condemnation, roof leaks, vandals, and nearly 3 decades of people apparently wondering where the original Blackwood records had gone. 2 days later, Frank finished his structural inspection. He tapped the concrete beside the vault frame with a small hammer. Talk, talk, talk. Original foundation wall is sound. No significant movement around the opening. Room behind it appears integrated into the original basement footprint. So we can open it. Structurally, I'm comfortable with controlled access. I called Laura before Frank finished the sentence. She arrived with a licensed safe and vault technician named Carl Mercer, a camera, evidence labels, and enough caution to make opening a door feel like preparing for surgery. Carl examined the steel face without touching the locking mechanism. Old commercial archive door, he said. Mechanical bolts. Probably auxiliary access behind this cover. He pointed to a small brass plate almost invisible beneath the dust. My pulse changed. The plate had a narrow keyway. Laura looked at me. I went upstairs and returned with the sealed envelope. She documented it first. Photograph of tag. Click. Photograph of key. Click. Photograph of the untouched brass cover. Click. Then she handed the key to Carl. You try it. He inserted B17. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then he turned it. Click. The brass cover released and swung outward. Behind it sat a mechanical access assembly, exactly where Carl expected one. He looked at me. The key doesn't open the vault. Of course it doesn't. But it gives me legitimate service access without drilling the door. Laura raised a hand. Before anything else, we document the condition. More photographs. More timestamps. More waiting. Carl worked slowly. Metal whispered against metal. A dial turned. Tools clicked. Then, after nearly 40 minutes, he stepped back and wrapped one hand around the operating lever. Ready? I looked at Laura. She nodded. Carl pulled. Inside the door, heavy bolts withdrew with a deep mechanical sound. Thunk. Dust trembled from the frame. The steel door moved an inch. Cold, stale air slipped through the opening, carrying the smell of paper, leather, and something metallic. No alarms. No gold spilling onto the floor. No cinematic pile of cash. Just darkness. Carl opened it farther. Portable lights spilled inside. Shelves appeared. Boxes. Rolled plats tied with faded cloth. Leather-bound ledgers. Metal document cases stacked along the rear wall. Laura stepped beside me and stared into the room. Nobody touches anything yet. I barely heard her. On the nearest shelf sat a wooden archival box covered in dust. Blackwood Hotel, original conveyance records. Beneath it was a sealed case labeled Access Drive/Lake Parcel. I looked at Laura. She looked back at me. Vanessa wasn't afraid there was something valuable in here, I said. Laura's eyes returned to the records. No, she pulled on a pair of archival gloves. She was afraid there was something recorded. The first document Laura removed from the vault made Vanessa's map look different before we even unfolded it. It was a linen-backed survey plat, yellowed at the edges, tied with a faded blue ribbon and stamped Blackwood Estate, Final Conveyance Exhibit. We carried it upstairs because Laura refused to examine 90-year-old paper in a dusty basement. By noon, the ruined hotel lobby had become an evidence room. Folding tables stood beneath the dead chandelier. Archival boxes sat in numbered rows. Frank photographed each container before Laura opened it. Click. Label. Log. Repeat. I wasn't allowed to shuffle through anything like a kid opening Christmas presents. Chain of custody, Laura reminded me. It's my vault, and if these records matter later, you'll be grateful we treated them like they weren't. The sealed Access Drive/Lake Parcel case came third. Laura cut the deteriorated paper seal while I watched. Inside were correspondence files, original plats, tax maps, and a deed packet held together with a rusted brass clip. She unfolded the largest plat across the old reception desk. I pulled out the current Blackwood Ridge map Peter had given us and placed it beside the original. Same ridge, same lake, same curved access road, different ownership lines. On the HOA map, the road was shaded green and labeled Blackwood Ridge Private Access Drive. On the original plat, the narrow strip beneath that road carried a parcel number, 14C. Where's the conveyance? I asked. Laura searched the packet. One deed transferred the community lodge. Another transferred the maintenance tract. An easement granted lake path access. Parcel 14C appeared repeatedly in planning notes, but no executed deed transferred it. Maybe it's somewhere else in the archive. Maybe. She kept reading. Then she found a typed memorandum dated 2 weeks before the developer closing. The paper crackled when she lifted it. Subject, Deferred Conveyance, Parcel 14C. Laura read silently, then handed it to me. The transfer had been postponed pending resolution of an old utility reservation and boundary discrepancy. Deferred, I said, not transferred, according to this document, and according to the county index you already searched. Yes. She pointed at me. Still not a courtroom conclusion. You're ruining another excellent moment. It's a gift. We spent 3 hours cataloging. Then Frank found a second correspondence folder. Inside was something newer. Much newer. An attorney letter from 7 years earlier addressed to the Blackwood Ridge Board. I recognized the firm name from Peter's photocopied email. Laura read the first page. Her expression changed. Nathan. She handed it over. The letter concerned planned resurfacing and assessment of the access drive. Counsel advised the board that recorded title to Parcel 14C could not be confirmed in the association or its predecessor and recommended locating the original Blackwood conveyance archive before representing the strip as HOA-owned property. I read the paragraph again. 7 years ago. Yes. They knew. The board was warned there was a title defect. Vanessa was president then. Laura checked the distribution line. Vanessa Hart, president. Peter Walsh, treasurer. Board of directors. There it was. Not proof of some elaborate conspiracy. Something simpler. Harder to explain away. Vanessa had received a written warning years before she stood in my basement calling the archive community property. My phone vibrated against the reception desk. Vanessa. I showed Laura the screen. Answer it, she said. I put it on speaker. Nathan. Vanessa didn't bother with hello. I understand you entered B17. I looked at Laura. That information travels fast. Did you open the archive? Yes. Silence. Against the association's demand? After my attorney confirmed my ownership position and a structural engineer cleared the room. Her voice sharpened. You had no authority to access community records. I looked down at the 7-year-old council letter with her name printed at the top. Interesting choice of words. I want the contents secured immediately. They are. And the keys surrendered. No, Nathan, you are creating significant liability for yourself. I ran my finger beneath the sentence advising the HOA not to represent Parcel 14C as association-owned. Vanessa, I have one question. Laura, watch me carefully. Did your attorney ever tell the board there was a problem with the title to the access drive? Nothing. Not breathing. Not paper moving. Just silence. Then Vanessa said, I'm not discussing privileged association communications with you. That was the answer. Fair enough. Do not remove anything from that archive. Goodbye, Vanessa. I ended the call. Rain struck the lobby windows harder now. Laura gathered the original records into archival sleeves. We need certified county records before we accuse anyone of anything. Agreed. And we need to determine who currently holds title to Parcel 14C. Agreed. She narrowed her eyes. You're being suspiciously cooperative. I looked toward the basement stairs. For days, Vanessa had wanted me focused on who owned the vault. But the vault wasn't the real fight anymore. I turned the old plat until Parcel 14C faced me. A narrow strip of land. A road hundreds of Blackwood Ridge residents used every week. A road their HOA maintained, regulated, and apparently charged them for. I don't need to accuse her, I said. Not yet. I tapped the 7-year-old letter. She already knew where the question was. Now we just have to find out where the answer leads. 3 days later, Laura called me at 6:18 in the morning and said 6 words that changed the entire fight. Nathan, Parcel 14C never transferred. I sat up in bed. Never. I searched every grantor variation, developer entity, corrective instrument, and subsequent conveyance we could identify. Then I had a title examiner independently run it. And the recorded chain stays with the Blackwood Hotel parcel. I stared through the window toward the dark silhouette of the hotel across the property. So I own the access drive. The underlying land appears to remain with your parcel. That does not automatically erase easements, usage rights, or other interests. Even before sunrise, Laura could ruin a victory properly. But the HOA doesn't own it. I cannot find any recorded instrument showing that it does. By 8, we were standing inside the hotel lobby with the original conveyance plat beside certified county copies. Parcel 14C matched. Same boundaries. Same curve toward the lake. Same strip Blackwood Ridge had colored green on its current map and labeled private access drive. Laura placed the 7-year-old attorney letter beside them. This is the problem Vanessa already knew existed. She knew title couldn't be confirmed. Correct. And kept calling it HOA property. Apparently. And charging residents for it. Peter is bringing those records. He arrived 20 minutes later carrying a banker's box. Assessment notices. Maintenance budgets. Board packets. Blackwood Ridge had collected annual road maintenance charges for years. That alone wasn't necessarily improper. An HOA could have maintenance obligations or access rights without owning the underlying land. Laura made that clear immediately. But several notices used language that went much further. Association-owned private drive. Exclusive Blackwood Ridge property. HOA-controlled parcel. Peter looked sick when Laura lined them up. I signed some of those budgets. Budgets aren't deeds, she said. What matters now is what the board represented and what authority supported those representations. He rubbed his forehead. Vanessa approved every notice. My phone buzzed. Vanessa again. This time I let it ring. A minute later, an email arrived. Emergency Board Review, Blackwood Archive. Laura read it over my shoulder. She wants access to inspect the records tomorrow. Does she get it? Not unsupervised. I was hoping for a shorter answer. Then ask easier questions. We agreed to allow Vanessa and Blackwood Ridge Council to inspect relevant records under controlled conditions. No originals removed. Everything logged. Everything photographed. The next afternoon, Vanessa walked into the ruined lobby wearing the same pink suit style, crisp white blouse, and black heels that clicked across the cracked tile. Click, click, click. Her attorney, Martin Hale, followed carrying a briefcase. Vanessa's eyes went immediately to the archival boxes. Where are the originals? Secured, Laura said. Copies of relevant records are here. Vanessa looked at me. You had no right to withhold association property. I didn't answer. Laura placed the 1998 agreement on the table. Then Exhibit C. Then the B-17 inventory. Then the original conveyance plat. Martin leaned over the documents. His expression remained neutral until Laura placed the certified chain of title report beside Parcel 14C. We have found no recorded conveyance transferring 14C from the hotel title chain, she said. Vanessa folded her arms. Blackwood Ridge has maintained that road for decades. Maintenance and title are different questions, Laura replied. The association has continuously controlled access. That may establish facts relevant to whatever rights you claim. It does not create a deed that we cannot locate. Vanessa looked at Martin. Tell her. He didn't. Instead, he picked up the 7-year-old council letter. I watched his eyes move down the page. Vanessa, he said quietly, have you seen this before? She didn't answer immediately. Peter stood near the reception desk. She received it. Vanessa turned toward him. Peter, this is not the time. When is the time? His voice shook, but he didn't stop. 7 years ago? 4 years ago? Yesterday. The ruined lobby went silent except for plastic sheeting rustling somewhere above us. Vanessa looked back at Laura. None of this changes the association's historical rights. Maybe not, Laura said. That's why we're not making claims beyond what the records support. Then she placed one of Vanessa's assessment notices beside the old plat. Association-owned private drive. But this does raise a simpler question. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Which is? Laura tapped the words association-owned. What document authorized Blackwood Ridge to say that? Vanessa stared at the page. No answer came. I reached into my pocket and placed the brass B-17 key on the reception desk between us. Clink. Her eyes dropped to it. You demanded this key before I opened the vault, I said. You told me the archive belonged to Blackwood Ridge before anyone knew what was inside. She looked up. Because the records concern the community. Some do. I pointed toward Parcel 14C, including records your own attorney asked you to find 7 years ago. For the first time since I met Vanessa Hart, she didn't look angry. She looked cornered by chronology. Laura closed the folder. The board meeting is tomorrow night, correct? Martin nodded slowly. Yes. Good, she said. Then everyone can hear the same documents explained at the same time. Vanessa looked at me. You think one old vault gives you control over Blackwood Ridge? I picked up the brass key. No. I looked at the original plat beneath her assessment notice. I think it proves the difference between what your HOA controls and what it merely kept calling its own. By 7 o'clock the next evening, every folding chair in the Blackwood Ridge clubhouse was occupied. Residents stood along the back wall, crowded beside the windows, and filled the hallway outside the meeting room. I could smell coffee, wet jackets, and the lemon cleaner somebody had used on the floor 20 minutes before people arrived. Laura sat beside me with 3 document binders stacked neatly in front of her. The brass B-17 key rested inside a clear evidence sleeve in the top binder. Across the room, Vanessa Hart sat beneath the Blackwood Ridge emblem wearing a tailored pink suit, white blouse, and black heels. Perfect posture. Perfect makeup. Perfectly still. If you hadn't seen the documents, you would have thought she controlled the room. This special meeting concerns unauthorized access to historical association records discovered within the former Blackwood Hotel, Vanessa began. Laura leaned toward me. Listen to the wording. I did. Not hotel archive. Association records. Vanessa was establishing ownership before anyone had established ownership. Martin Hale, the HOA attorney, sat 2 chairs away from her and looked considerably less comfortable. Vanessa continued. For decades, Blackwood Ridge has maintained community facilities originating from the Blackwood estate, including the private access drive. A few residents nodded. Recent actions by Mr. Cole have created uncertainty concerning records and property long understood to belong to this association. Long understood, I whispered. Laura opened the first binder. Public comment started 20 minutes later. Laura stood. No drama. No accusation. She carried one enlarged map to an easel and placed it where everyone could see. This is the current Blackwood Ridge map. Green shading marked the road. Blackwood Ridge Private Access Drive. And this, she said, placing the original conveyance plat beside it, was recovered from the B-17 owner archive. Same road. Different label. Parcel 14C. People leaned forward. Vanessa folded her hands. Historical plats do not necessarily reflect subsequent conveyances. Correct, Laura said. That answer caught Vanessa off guard, which is why we checked subsequent conveyances. Laura placed certified county records on the table. We located transfers for the community lodge, maintenance tract, and lake path rights. We have not located a recorded deed transferring Parcel 14C to Blackwood Ridge or its predecessor. Murmurs moved through the room. Vanessa spoke immediately. The association has maintained and controlled that road for decades. Maintenance is documented, Laura said. Title is a separate question. She displayed the memorandum from the archive. Deferred conveyance, Parcel 14C. This document indicates the planned transfer was postponed because of unresolved utility and boundary issues. A man in the second row raised his hand. So who owns the road? Laura didn't oversell it. The current title examination indicates the underlying parcel remained in the Blackwood Hotel chain. Existing access or other rights require separate analysis. That restraint mattered. She wasn't giving residents a fantasy. She was giving them records. Vanessa leaned toward her microphone. None of this eliminates Blackwood Ridge's historical rights. We agree, Laura said. But it does create a problem with statements like this. She placed an HOA assessment notice on the easel. Association-owned private drive. Another. Exclusive Blackwood Ridge property. Another. HOA-controlled parcel. The room got quieter with every page. Peter Walsh stood near the wall. Vanessa saw him. Maintenance assessments were authorized for community infrastructure. That may be true, Laura said. But tonight we are discussing ownership representations. Then she removed the 7-year-old attorney letter. Martin Hale lowered his eyes before she read anything. 7 years ago, Association Counsel advised the board that recorded title to Parcel 14C could not be confirmed and recommended locating the original Blackwood conveyance archive before representing the parcel as HOA owned. Someone behind me said, 7 years? Laura turned the letter so the distribution line faced the room. Vanessa Hart, President. Peter Walsh, Treasurer. Board of Directors. Vanessa's expression hardened. That correspondence was preliminary. Peter stepped away from the wall. But we received it. Vanessa looked at him. Peter. We did. His voice was steadier than it had been in the diner. And Vanessa kept asking whether the hotel records had survived. Residents began talking over one another. Then why were we told the road belonged to us? What exactly were we paying for? Did the board know? Vanessa struck the gavel once. Bang. Order. Laura waited until the room settled. Then she placed the B-17 inventory sheet beside the attorney letter. Owner archive, retained with hotel premises. There is one more issue, she said. When Nathan discovered the vault, Ms. Hart demanded its keys before the archive was opened and before its contents had been inventoried. Vanessa's eyes moved toward me. I stood and removed the brass key from its sleeve. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning vent above us. I placed the key on the table. Clink. You called me 12 minutes after we uncovered the door, I said. You didn't ask what we found. You told me not to open it. Vanessa's voice stayed controlled. Because I had reason to believe community records were inside. Exactly. I looked at the old council letter. You knew the records might answer a title question your board had been warned about 7 years earlier. That is your interpretation. Martin shifted in his chair. Vanessa. She ignored him. One old archive does not invalidate decades of community operation. Nobody said it does, I replied. That's the difference between us. I pointed first to her green HOA map, then to the original plat. I'm not claiming more than the documents show. Then I pointed at the words association owned. You did. For several seconds, Vanessa said nothing. Behind her, the Blackwood Ridge emblem suddenly looked less like authority and more like decoration. The vault hadn't contained treasure. It had contained something far more dangerous to someone relying on certainty, the original paperwork. And for the first time that night, the residents weren't looking at me as the man who bought their condemned hotel. They were looking at Vanessa as the woman who had known there was a question and kept giving them an answer anyway. 6 weeks later, the brass B-17 key was sitting behind glass in the Blackwood Hotel lobby. The display case wasn't fancy. Not yet. Half the ceiling above it was still exposed, scaffolding covered the west wall, and the old chandelier remained wrapped in protective plastic while electricians rewired the third floor. But every morning when sunlight came through those arched windows, the brass caught it. A small engraved card beneath the key read, Blackwood Hotel, Owner Archive, B-17. Recovered during restoration. No mention of Vanessa Hart. No mention of the HOA. It didn't need one. Blackwood Ridge spent the weeks after that meeting doing what should have been done years earlier, separating what everyone believed from what the records actually supported. Martin Hale brought an independent title counsel. The board commissioned a new survey and full title review. Parcel 14C remained in the Blackwood Hotel chain. The HOA did have documented access interests connected to the lake and legitimate reasons to maintain portions of the route, but nobody found the deed Vanessa had spent years speaking as though she possessed. More importantly, the board reviewed years of notices describing the road as association-owned and exclusive HOA property after council had already warned that title could not be confirmed. The result wasn't dramatic. Nobody came out of the clubhouse in handcuffs. No television crews waited beside the road. Real consequences are usually quieter. The board voted to withdraw unsupported ownership language from its maps, notices, and governing materials. Assessments connected to legitimate maintenance were separated from charges that had relied on unsupported ownership representations. Where the independent review determined credits or reimbursements were appropriate, residents received them. And Vanessa? She made it through one more board meeting. Peter called me afterward. She resigned. Before the vote. About 20 minutes before. I stood inside the old lobby, looking toward the basement stairs. What vote? Removal as president. I didn't celebrate. That surprised me. For weeks, I had imagined how satisfying it would feel to watch Vanessa lose the authority she had used against me. Instead, all I felt was relief that the argument could finally become boring. Boring meant surveys, recorded instruments, lawyers negotiating language, people solving the actual problem instead of defending their pride. Peter became interim president, and his first conversation with me started differently from Vanessa's. What do we need to do to keep residents using the road legally? Not, give me the keys. Not, that belongs to us. Just a question. Laura handled the rest. The final agreement took 37 pages because apparently attorneys consider trees an unlimited resource. It recognized the hotel title holder's ownership of the underlying Parcel 14C subject to define community access rights. Blackwood Ridge accepted specified maintenance responsibilities. Access boundaries were established by survey coordinates instead of green marker on an HOA map. Neither side could represent access rights as ownership. Neither side could obstruct the other's documented rights. After the board approved it, Peter signed for Blackwood Ridge. I signed for Blackwood Hotel. The agreement was recorded. Nobody lost access to the lake. Nobody needed to. That had never been my goal. Months passed. Blackwood slowly came back to life. The rotten carpet disappeared. The walnut reception desk was restored instead of replaced. We repaired the ballroom roof and uncovered the original stone fireplace beneath 3 layers of bad remodeling. Frank complained about every surprise the building gave us and secretly enjoyed all of them. Laura continued charging me for sentences containing words like notwithstanding. The B-17 archive stayed exactly where we found it, except now it had climate control, archival shelving, and a new fire-rated enclosure. Historical records relating to Blackwood Ridge were professionally digitized, and the HOA received copies of documents it had legitimate reasons to possess. The original stayed with the hotel archive according to the recorded ownership documents. One afternoon, I stood alone in the basement and opened the vault door. Thunk! The same heavy bolts that had started everything withdrew into the steel. The room smelled different now. Less dust, more clean paper, and new shelving. I thought about the first phone call. Whatever you found downstairs, don't open it. Vanessa had believed the danger was behind that door. She was wrong about that too. Paper wasn't dangerous. Neither was the key. The dangerous thing was certainty without proof. I closed the vault and walked upstairs. In the lobby, a little boy visiting with his parents stopped at the glass display. "What does that key open?" he asked. I looked at the tarnished brass tag. B-17. "Not the vault," I said. His father laughed. "Then why keep it?" I thought about the hidden brass cover, the mechanical access panel, the original plat, the 7-year-old warning letter. Vanessa standing in pink heels on a dusty basement floor, demanding something she had never owned. "Because it opened the first door," I said. That evening, I stepped outside beneath the restored hotel sign. Cars moved along Parcel 14C toward Blackwood Ridge, exactly as they had for years. Nobody stopped them. Nobody needed to. The difference was that now everyone knew why they could use it, and who actually owned the ground underneath. Vanessa had demanded my keys because she thought control meant getting to the evidence first. I learned something different. Power loves locked doors. Justice only needs the right one opened.